Hi, readers. I am ready to read Chapter 8 of our memoir, Small Steps, and Chapter 8 is called Roommates. Here we go. In mid-October, Dr. Bevis told me, "I have wonderful news. You are being discharged from University Hospital, and you are going back to Sheltering Arms for rehabilitation." I burst into tears. "That isn't wonderful news. I don't want to leave. I want to stay here." Dr. Bevis patted my shoulder. "We've done all we can for you here," he said. "You need different therapy now. You'll have a new doctor and—" "I don't want a new doctor. I want you. And a new physical therapist." Tommy said, "No more Mrs. Crab." I blew my nose. "Do I have to?" I asked. "Can I be rehabilitated here?" "We don't do it here. We only handle acute cases." "Tommy has been here longer than I have, and you aren't kicking him out," I said. "Tommy needs a respirator." "I don't know anybody at the Sheltering Arms." "You didn't know anyone here when you first came. It's always hard to be the new kid, but you'll adjust." I saw that there was no use in arguing. "When do I leave?" I asked. "This afternoon. The discharge papers are ready." Actually, they were ready a couple of days ago, but the Sheltering Arms didn't have a bed for you until now. You've already known for 2 days that I was leaving. Why didn't you tell anyone?" "Maybe we were afraid that you'd make a fuss." I scowled at him, aware that I was making a fuss. "They probably won't even paint my toenails," I said. He laughed, and then he went out the door. This time, I could take my belongings with me. My clothes, my books, and the new teddy bear were packed in a paper bag. All morning, nurses stopped by to wish me well. Even Mrs. Crab came to wish me goodbye. "I know you hated the exercises because they hurt," she said, "but someday you will thank me for making you do them." I doubted that. "I'll miss you," Tommy said, "especially your reading to me and your knock-knock jokes, and I'll miss the Lone Ranger." "You can keep my radio," I told him. "Think about me every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday." "No kidding? I get to keep the radio?" "Sure, my parents can bring me my radio from home." That wasn't true. I didn't have any radio at home. I listened to the Lone Ranger on our family radio, but in the time we had together, no one had visited Tommy, for his family lived hundreds of miles away. They probably didn't know that he wanted a radio at the hospital. I decided Tommy needed to hear the Lone Ranger more than I did. "Thanks," he said. "I hope you learn to walk again." I looked at his small head protruding from the iron lung, the soft swoosh, swoosh of the machine that had been background music for our reading, for every conversation, and for the Lone Ranger broadcasts. Now that I was being released, while my fellow inmate of the prison of paralysis might listen to the swooshing forever. "I hope you learn to breathe without the respirator," I told him, and I never made a more sincere wish. "Goodbye, Tonto. Adios, Kimosabi." As I was being transferred to the ambulance gurney, Dr. Bevis pinned a yellow rose to my pajama top. "For my favorite patient," he said. My lip began to tremble. He said, "Knock, knock." I blinked back my tears. "Who's there?" "You'll." "You'll who?" "You'll be back soon to walk for me." "That's right," I said as I was lifted into the ambulance. At the Sheltering Arms, I was put in a large room with 4 other girls. Instead of the sterile white walls and white blankets that I'd had at University Hospital, room 202 was full of color, with striped blankets, flowered curtains, and pictures on the walls. There was even a bookcase filled with books. We each had a hospital bed that could be cranked up so that our head and shoulders were elevated. This allowed us to see one another, and I quickly became acquainted with my new roommates. Dorothy was 14, a cheerful girl with a shy, sweet smile. She was sitting in a wheelchair when I arrived, and she waved a welcome. I liked her immediately. "I came here from University Hospital too," she said, "on my birthday. I was still paralyzed then from the neck down." Dorothy told me she had been at the Sheltering Arms for 2 months and was hoping to learn how to walk again with braces on her legs. Shirley, who was also 14, was fighting a double problem. She had been born with arms that only straightened halfway. Now, polio had made her situation worse. After 7 months in the hospital, she still had no movement in her legs. Because of back weakness, she could sit in a wheelchair for only brief periods. She also had breathing problems. Renee, petite and dark-haired, was 12, like me. "I'm learning how to walk with leg braces and walking sticks," she told me. "I'll probably always have to use them unless physical therapy works wonders." At the mention of physical therapy, I groaned. "I call physical therapy torture time," I said. "It isn't so bad," Renee said. "At least I'm out of the iron lung." "You were in an iron lung?" I said. Renee nodded. "At University Hospital, I was in one for 5 months. "I was in an iron lung too," said Shirley. "So was I," said Dorothy. My hopes for Tommy soared. Maybe he will get out of the iron lung. I looked at the last of my roommates, who also was in a wheelchair. She hadn't said anything. "This is Alice," Dorothy said. "She's 13. Alice was a sturdy-looking girl with wide eyes and soft curls. Her toes pointed permanently downward, the drop-foot condition that the footboard on my hospital bed was intended to prevent. I asked her how long she had been at Sheltering Arms. 10 years, she said. I gaped at her. 10 years? You've been here since you were 3 years old? Well, Alice said, the genius can subtract. When will you be able to go home? I asked. I am home. Alice lives at the Sheltering Arms, Renee said. Disbelieving, I pressed on. But what about your parents? Don't you have any family? My parents, said Alice, don't want me. I stared at her, not knowing what to say. After I'd been here a few months, the doctor said I could go home, but I would never get any better, Alice said. I waited. My parents refused to take me. They didn't want a big, old, crippled blob on their hands for the rest of their lives. I realized she wanted to shock me, and she succeeded. I was speechless. Renee continued the explanation. Alice comes from a big family, she said. She got polio before the doctors knew about the hot packs and muscle stretches. When she didn't get well, her parents were unable to take care of her and all the other kids too, so she became a ward of the state. I'm sorry, I said. Don't feel sorry for me, Alice snapped. I like it here. I wouldn't leave even if they paid me. I thought about my parents. I knew they would never refuse to take me home, no matter what condition I was in. For the first time since my paralysis set in, I realized that there was something worse than having polio. Oh, pardon me. Don't look so horrified, Alice said. Dorothy could go home too, if there was someone to take care of her. I looked nervously across the room. Had another of my roommates been abandoned by her family? Dorothy smiled reassuringly. I live on a farm, she said, and everyone has to work. I can't go home until I can get around by myself, because once I'm home, there won't always be someone to help me. My family can't afford to hire help. I'm learning to put braces on my legs now, so it shouldn't be too much longer. You hope, said Alice. The chip on her shoulder seemed like the size of a fireplace log, but I didn't blame her for being mad at the world. I never thought of myself as a privileged child. My dad sold meat for the Hormel company. My mother was a homemaker. Grandpa worked in a print shop, setting type. Ours was an average, middle-class family. Now I saw how lucky I was, not only to have parents who loved me, but parents who were able to take care of me and to meet my needs, whatever they might be. I had absolutely no doubt that if the doctor said I could go home, I would be out the door the next day. And if I ended up like a big old crippled blob, as Alice put it, I shuddered. Even though I knew my parents would always love me and take care of me, I didn't want them to have to. I wanted to go home and return to school and be a normal person. And I wanted to go back to University Hospital and walk for Dr. Bevis. I was going to meet my new physical therapist, Miss Ballard, the next morning, and I dreaded it. What if she was another Mrs. Crabbe? Or worse. After hearing Alice's story, though, I decided I would do everything Miss Ballard asked me to do, even if she was the torture champion of all time. Okay, so I'm thinking with that chapter, how lucky each and every one of us may be, and that we need to count our blessings, because we all have blessings. Even if it is to think about, hey, I got up out of bed this morning. Hey, I get to eat breakfast, either at home or at school, and I can see my friends. Think about that. And on our next meeting together, we shall read Chapter 9, Sunday Visitors. Okay, guys, have a fabulous day, and I will see you next time. Bye.